What are some things weighing you down that you may need advice on? Toxic mother-in-law has been drugging me. I need some serious advice on what to do, other than going to the police. So my mother-in-law, who I thought was a loving person, has been coming over a lot ever since my dear husband and I told her we were trying to have a baby after 5 years of marriage. Toxic mother-in-law has never been my biggest fan. She thinks my career takes over most of my life and I have no time to cater to her poor little baby boy. Dear husband, I am very successful, I own my own store, and it does take up a lot of my day. But I am home every night at 5 p.m. A half hour after. Dear husband, I have told toxic mother-in-law that if I were to have a child, I could easily work out of my own home for the first year until dear daughter or dear son is old enough for daycare. I thought this arrangement was agreed upon since it's a pretty solid game plan. She played it off as excited and happy for us. Dear husband, and I told toxic mother-in-law about the plan for a baby around October 5th. I know this because it was a few days after my birthday. Every single day since, and I mean every single day since, toxic mother-in-law has been coming over for coffee or drinks every night at 5:30 p.m. I haven't been too bothered by it as she helps clean up around the house, and helps with supper to keep my baby incubator stress-free. Toxic mother-in-law has always been a bit overly touchy with dear husband. He's currently 27 years old, and a few months ago he announced to the family how sore he was from work, and he couldn't get this one knot out of his neck. What does she do? Jumps off of the couch, and rushes behind the chair he's sitting on, and starts massaging his neck and shoulders. I was so weirded out, I just gave dear husband the what the F look, and he went wide-eyed, looked to the side, back at me as if he was asking for help. Ready for the messed up story yet? So every day that she's been coming over, the drinks and coffee have always tasted fine. Not one fiber in my body did I ever expect her to put anything in there. So here's what happened. Today, I was sitting down on the couch watching TV while she was in our kitchen, as she always suggests, making the coffee just by herself. Everything is normal, she gossips. I listen, and nod, and maybe throw in a little chuckle here and there. She finishes her coffee, and cleans up, but mine is still around half full. She asks if she can take the cup. I say no because I'd like to have the rest. After she leaves, I finish the rest of my coffee, and see a little pink pill poking out of the coffee grounds that I've sunk to the bottom. We use a French press. I see this little pill, half dissolved, but still very visible. I pick it out with my fingers, and lo and behold, it's a goddamn birth control pill. She has been spiking my coffee and drinks with birth control. I had been taking this exact pill since I was 15 years old. I knew exactly what it was. This happened about 8 hours ago. It's currently 2 a.m. and I've finally pieced everything together after making a few calls to my local pharmacy. According to the pharmacist at Target, my mother had picked up 6 months worth of birth control, and paid for it in cash. I told the pharmacist that that was impossible, because my mother had passed away 4 years ago. I asked what was the name that picked it up, and she said she didn't record the name, but the pharmacist that took the order checked her ID to make sure last names were similar. And bingo, I took dear husband's last name when I married him, and boom. Toxic mother-in-law played as my mother, and picked up 6 packs of the birth control, and has been spiking my drinks with it for the past 3 months. Me and dear husband have been trying so hard to have a child. It's been something we have looked forward to for 2 years. We are finally in a wonderful place to start, but this crap happens. This has to be illegal. She could go to jail for this, right? I'm so hurt and betrayed, but mostly disgusted and so angry. I haven't told her or dear husband that I found the pill. I needed to understand everything first. And I need advice from lovely women who deals with batcrap crazy mother-in-laws. Please help. Give me a master plan on how to deal with this. I hate confrontation, but I'm gonna burn a bitch's house down. So story time. I delivered my daughter 6 weeks ago and I'm still angry and bitter about this. My grandma had a very classic and feminine name and I have always loved it. Husband didn't make it in time for the birth, so I decided since I was alone, I can name her whatever I wanted, because he didn't show up for hours. She gets to the hospital, and we're talking about the baby, and she goes, "Oh God, what an ugly name. You should name her Bertha." I said no, I don't like that name, but thanks for the suggestion. I shuffled to the bathroom, and while I was showering, she had filled out the birth certificate information, and actually tried handing it into the birth registrar to rename my daughter. She had forged my signature, and everything. The lady taking the forms came to me to clarify since I had already filled out the forms previously, and mother-in-law declared it was just a joke, and she didn't mean anything by it. To this day, she asks me about Bertha and I refuse to engage, but if she thinks she is coming over to visit anymore, She has a huge surprise a-comin'. She has been off her rocker since her husband died. Had my baby shower over the weekend. Snide mother-in-law comes to help set up. As we are placing decorations on tables, she feels so needful to state that it looks like a party for a little kid. I stopped in my tracks, turned in her direction, then point at my stomach, and remind her it is for a kid. She rolls her eyes and I get this huffy, "Oh well, you know what I mean" remark. And of course at the end we get to hear a lovely comment about how she's just glad all of that's over with. All I can do is think to myself, yes, you put such a large effort into this. You had to make 40 salami rolls, and bring 2 cases of water. Insert eye roll. Honestly, after all her fussy comments leading up to the shower, I'm surprised that's all that was said. She felt the need to tell me I invited too many people. Keep in mind she was not hosting this, and did not pay for hardly anything. That's why she was given such a small task. I later found out she made a comment to dear husband asking what cult we had joined that we would know over 80 people to invite. Icing on the cake is that she didn't get us anything for the baby shower. Told dear husband that she will just wait, and see what everybody else got us, and find out what we need, after. She's not computer savvy, and according to her a gift registry is rude. The day after the shower, we go to visit my sister-in-law who is in from out of state. Of course she's staying with the in-laws. So while we're there, mother-in-law feels the need to lecture dear husband about his unnecessary spending. Because him going with friends out for drinks and dinner was just unnecessary. According to her, I love seeing my husband's shiny spine when he told her it wasn't her money, and none of her business. She tried to backpedal, and say she was just referring to us needing to back off on those things once the baby gets here. He then told her the same thing. It's still none of your business because it's still not your money. Remove the tattoo or we won't come to your wedding. My fiancé and I got similar tattoos recently. Mine is on my forearm, about an inch long, and an inch wide. My parents don't like my fiancé because he has tattoos. That is the sole reason they dislike him. Knowing we were going to tell them about the engagement and about the tattoo I got, my brother loudly asked me about my tattoo at dinner. Knowing how important it was that this night went well, my parents immediately start guilt-tripping me about how I've broken their hearts. They say my grandparents are rolling in their graves, and whatever else they can think of. I then added my brother for his lower back tattoo of Scooby-Doo. Dinner ends shortly after that. While brother scolds us for behaving like children, which is fair to be honest, sister messages me and tells me that she yelled at mom and dad for me, saying that the tattoo shouldn't matter, and telling them off for being so focused on the tattoo on my forearm that they couldn't see the engagement ring on my finger. So now my parents know I'm engaged, which is fine, although I'd hoped to tell them in happier circumstances. And then I get a text from my dad. "Op, we were distraught to hear what you've done to yourself. Your mother and I will pay for laser removal, and we expect you to meet us halfway, and get it. If you refuse, you can expect to not see us at the wedding. If you intend to keep it then we will need some time to adjust. But we cannot in good conscience watch you walk down the aisle with that on your arm. We hope you will take up our offer. Love, Dad, and Mom." They sent the same message to my brother, who isn't even seeing anyone right now, threatening to also not come to his wedding if he doesn't remove his tattoo. I knew they didn't like tattoos, but I never in a million years thought they'd have this big of an issue with it. Please provide advice. Nice try, mother-in-law. My boyfriend's mother has been exhibiting some toxicity for a while now. Some of her symptoms include constantly making jokes about my appearance, treating me like a servant when she comes here, repeatedly showing up whenever she feels like it, getting annoyed when we have plans, and complaining that my boyfriend never has time for his poor old mom since we got together, and always comparing me to his ex, saying I'd never measure up to her. It's also worth adding at this stage that the reason she liked his ex so much is that the ex was so worried mother-in-law wouldn't like her she agreed to everything mother-in-law said and did, which included learning how to cook Esso's favorite foods, and letting mother-in-law take her shopping to buy her clothing that mother-in-law would wear. It was creepy, especially given that she looked a little like mother-in-law, like same hair and eye color, same face shape. I'd heard the horror stories, seen the warning signs, and noted all the red flags, and a couple weeks ago I essentially gave my boyfriend a presentation on why I know for a fact his mom doesn't like me. He told me he understands what I'm saying, and he's going to have a talk with her. I watched him call out his mom over the phone about the way she treats me, and her constant babying of him, and how it has to stop. On the call she was gracious about the whole thing, apologized for her treatment of both of us, and said she'd stop immediately. I actually felt bad when she said that. But then today she showed up again, totally random, during a time my boyfriend wasn't there. I said he wasn't home, and she said I know, and said she wanted to talk to me alone. Red flag number 1. She then said she wanted to do a fun day, so we could talk, and make sure everyone knows where they stand. Red flag number 2. I then said I had plans, which I did, and she said, well, you'll just have to cancel them then, while smiling. Red flag number 3. I then asked her what she was thinking of doing, and she said spa and shopping, bearing in mind the last time she took one of SO's partners shopping. I want to take this moment to thank everyone on advice subs, because my lurking has paid off. I put all of the advice into action. I know it was for other people, but I've nicked it. I looked mother-in-law dead in the eye, and said no. She asked why not. I said I don't want to. She demands a reason. I respond, I have a previous engagement and I do not want to go shopping with you. She says she planned this day out so we could sort things out. I say there is nothing to sort out. Have a nice day. And showed her the door. She leaves. I text SO to let him know what happened, and he responded, she already told me. She's not happy. Can't believe she just showed up when I just talked to her about that. Gonna have a talk with her about limits as soon as possible. I'm glad he's having that talk, and she's not even that bad as far as toxic parents go. But if he can get her to calm down and step off a bit, I do think she could eventually be a lovable person. Just needs some healthy boundaries, and a bit less insulting me, and one of those already seems to have stopped. For quick context, I'm a very shy, 22-year-old girl with a large chest, unfortunately. I have a favorite denim jacket that my dad bought for me just before he died that makes me feel confident, and it covers up my assets well. However, my mother-in-law hates it. Mother-in-law has a similar build to me but dresses much more provocatively. She is a strong believer in showing off the blessings that God gave you, as she says. Dear husband and I have only been married for a short time, but my relationship with mother-in-law was generally good though up until now. The story. It was a few days before my sister-in-law's engagement party at a country club. I was shopping around trying to find a dress that I would feel good in, but I was having trouble finding a flattering, budget-friendly dress. However, I still hadn't found what I was looking for. The day before the party, mother-in-law suggested I borrow one of her dresses, which I thought was nice of her because she has a lot of really nice clothes. So, mother-in-law and I are going through her closet, and I quickly realized that most of her dresses were a bit too risque for my liking. But I did find a red maxi dress. Mother-in-law shut that idea down because she thought it wouldn't be the right style for an evening party. Instead, she picked out a black strapless tight-fitting low-cut dress that I would definitely not be comfortable in. She kept insisting I wear it, and I needed a dress, so I agreed since I figured I could wear my denim jacket over it anyway. Maybe if I felt comfortable, I would take it off at dinner or something, maybe. Now, it's engagement party time. I arrive at the party wearing the dress with a bunch of family and unfamiliar faces, and easily decided there is no way I'm taking my jacket off. The dress exposes way too much of my body, and I felt super insecure. Dinner time arrives. Dear husband and I are sitting at our table just chatting with dear husband's friends when mother-in-law literally yells, "Oh my god, enough with that freaking jacket," and just starts stripping my jacket off of me. I didn't even realize what was happening until she almost pulled my freaking top down. Everyone saw. I don't know what exactly they saw because the whole thing happened so fast, and I managed to secure the front of the dress, but people were staring over at us for what felt like forever. Fast forward to now and mother-in-law still has my freaking jacket. I asked dear husband to get it from her because I don't want to talk to her, but he doesn't seem fazed by any of this. He keeps saying, well, no one saw anything. It was funny, no big deal. I don't understand why he doesn't get how much of a big deal this actually is. I tried to not make a big thing of it at the party because I didn't want to ruin sister-in-law's night, but I really want my jacket back. Mother-in-law keeps denying that she has it, and dear husband does not want me to start a fight with her. What do I do? Am I overreacting? Mother-in-law moves in without asking. Okay, I have a nightmare mother-in-law situation and I need advice. Been with my fiancée for almost 2 years. She has 3 children, and we are expecting our first child together in a couple months. Fiancée just moved in with me 3 months ago. Here's the issue. Shortly after moving in with me, I noticed her mom showed up unannounced over the weekend, and stayed for 3 days. Well, it wasn't a one-time deal. She has continued to show up unannounced at our doorstep every single week, give or take 2 weekends over the past 3 months. She basically lives with us part-time whenever she has a stretch of days off work. She is at our house, doesn't ask, doesn't tell us she's coming. Hell, she doesn't even ring the doorbell. She just walks in, and stays her happy ass in my home for 3 days straight. I've brought this up numerous times with my fiancée, which turns out to be a touchy subject for the obvious reason that it is her mother. My fiancée has never had a stable relationship even though she has 3 children. So her mother being present is something she has grown used to, and basically doesn't see an issue with it. I've explained to my fiancée that this is now our life together, not her mother's. She is welcome in our home, but I would appreciate a heads up before she arrives. Nothing is getting any better and I have no idea how to make this stop. My fiancée literally yelled at her own mother, and said you can't just show up whenever you want. You need to tell us this has not changed a thing. If I push this issue any further my fiancée will accuse me of being obsessive and controlling for trying to change the way her life has always been. I don't think this is fair to me considering I bought the house for her and her children. We live off of my income alone, and yet I still have to welcome her mother in my home as if she owns it. I am at a loss as to what to say to my significant other. We have our first baby due in April, so leaving is no option. Our house is already freaking tiny the way it is. This issue has made me confined to my own bedroom just to get some privacy. My fiancé continues to ask me why I'm crabby, what's wrong, why am I uncomfortable, but is oblivious to the fact that it is because her mother has taken over my freaking house and privacy. Mother-in-law pressured me into being friends with my husband's ex, and then made everything even worse. How would you guys feel about this? My husband is still friends with an ex-girlfriend he had nearly 10 years ago. I did not have a problem with it at first until his mother, 60, told him to leave me and get back with her. 2 years ago I had to go meet her. We came home after the meeting, and it was just horrible for me. It was horrible for me to see the two of them so close, and it made me very uncomfortable. That night my husband's mother stayed over at our place, and basically realized that I didn't feel well after the whole thing. So she tried to make me talk about my feelings, which I didn't want, so I just went to bed. The next morning I explained to her that I just was feeling weird about the experience, and that I have never been in a situation like that. She basically told me to grow up because everybody is friends with their exes, and that's normal. Later that week she again talked to me in the car about it, and told me how she was really afraid that I would not want my husband to see his ex again, and that I have to understand that she and her family will always be a huge part of his life, and that I should not take that away from him, and that I should be friends with her because she is one of the most amazing people in the world. So I just did what she said, even though I cried, and got hurt every time I saw her. It got way worse when I realized that she still had all the couple pictures on her Facebook, and when I finally made it into all the family group chats she was still in there. Mother-in-law also has photo books at all the tables that show them as a couple. Also mother-in-law started to talk about my husband's and his ex's sex life in front of me, and it makes me so uncomfortable. I talked to her about it, but it still makes me uncomfortable. Every time I have to see her I just think about that. Why is it not okay for me to just not want that? I mean, if he wants to stay in contact it's fine. But shouldn't it be okay to feel the way you feel, and maybe not be okay with it? I just don't want to be her friend anymore. DLDR, why do I have to be friends with his ex just because his mom thinks it's normal? Future mother-in-law, my boyfriend and I are pretty close to getting married soon, and he's planning to propose next year. We have been together for almost 6 years, and we are both sophomores in university. In the beginning of the relationship, things were weird because we were both young kids and meeting of the parents was new to both of us. His mom didn't really like me in the very beginning, but she didn't really even know me at the time. Side note, she has 3 kids, including him, and it's obvious that he's the favorite, and she just puts the other 2 on the back burner. I was always nice and polite to both his parents, but it always seemed off. Throughout the years, we started to become close sophomore to junior year, and then senior year, my freshman year of college, we were super close. We texted on and off. She invited me and my family over for Thanksgiving, and exchanged gifts for Christmas. They owned a small store where we lived because for them to stay in the country they had to work, his dad mostly, and because they're Australian. The store shut down at the end of our senior year, freshman year in college. Her husband ultimately had to go back to Australia, and it was just her and the 2 kids. I helped them out a lot by picking his sister up from school, and taking her back home, and dog sitting for when my future mother-in-law was doing errands. They always blame me when my boyfriend wanted to go out and see a bunch of movies, or whatever we did, when in fact, he likes to see movies all the time. My boyfriend is so scared to upset his mom that when he was at my house he would always leave at 8 p.m. because he didn't want to upset her, or if he wanted to hang out, she would be really passive-aggressive towards him, so sometimes we wouldn't even hang out. Now that the proposal is coming up, she's coming up with every excuse as to why he shouldn't marry me, etc. Since we're both in college, that comes with a lot of debt. Luckily, his parents are paying for everything, so he won't have any debt when we graduate versus me. I will not only have university debt, but law school debt as well because I am planning to attend veterinary school, so debt came up, and mortgages, and paying bills also came up. Side note, I pay for everything I have a job, and the only thing I don't pay for is my phone bill. Maybe if they allowed him to be independent, and pay for his own things, then he wouldn't be so helpless. They're doing a great disservice to him, in my opinion, and I don't really know his dad's opinion on us because he basically follows the lead of his wife or he'll get punished for it basically. He once told my boyfriend that he never saw us together because I'm of a different race, I'm Chinese, and my boyfriend is Anglo, and doesn't approve of my parents because my mother is Mexican, and my father is white. I'm adopted. All in all, she's controlling, passive-aggressive, and strange. She even made a new Facebook and Instagram, and blocked me on both. I texted her numerous times to ask how she was doing, Happy Mother's Day, and a happy birthday. If she didn't want me to text her, she could have simply texted me that, and have been done with it, but not completely cut me off like that. I am just getting so sick of this. Backstory: when I was 18, my mother kicked me out just before senior year of high school started. I lived with one lady for a few months before my boyfriend's family took me in. Everyone was great, and understanding of my predicament. I had some money coming from child support checks from my dad. For a few months, it was 7 people in a 3-bedroom house. I slept on the couch until my boyfriend, his mother and I got a small 2-bedroom 1-bath apartment across the street. My boyfriend and I in one room, the smallest, and mother-in-law in the other, the biggest. I paid rent until my checks ran out, and got a job a couple months after graduation. Everything was going fine until about 2 years ago. My boyfriend is on disability because he has physical diseases, so he cannot work, and feels bad that he can't. And backstory: now both my boyfriend and I pay the rent, everything included, buy the groceries, phone bill, etc. Mother-in-law does not. She takes our money, and pays it. We try to save for dates, things we want, gifts. But nope. She takes any that's left over, and spends it on bingo, and the lottery. Now after everything is paid for, there is maybe $20 or so left. I have since taken that extra 20, and stored it away to where she can't touch it. Side note: during the months I was unemployed, she did work for a delivery company to bring it a bit of money. She lords this over us till this day. Another thing, I deep clean the entire apartment every 2 weeks when I get the house to myself for a whole day. She knows this, and when she gets home, she will look for something I missed, and clean that little bit up, and act like she did all the work. She will claim that she is the only one that cleans, which is not true. My BF is well aware of all of this, and agrees that she needs her own place, but the one, and only time we brought it up, she threw a big fit that we didn't love or care about her. She stormed out, drove to the bingo hall, and cried to her friends, all of who called to yell at us for being ungrateful. Her niece, who lives across from us, chewed us out for not considering her feelings, and shouldn't demand such things. She has since claimed that the only way she would move out was if we were to have a child, which she has kept from happening, because every time my boyfriend and I get in the mood, she interrupts us with some bogus video she found, or she complains that we never spend time with her. We have to wait until we are alone in the apartment, which is rare. She sits at home all day, and is never gone long enough for us to do anything. Today, I have reached a boiling point. I was in the middle of cleaning the cabinets, and she walks in, and starts complaining that she is the only one that puts anything away. Not true. When we go grocery shopping, she will fill the cart up, my boyfriend and I load, and unload the car, and put everything up while she complains that she is hurting. Her son is feeling worse than she is. Anyways, I wanted to yell at her, but I didn't need to be ganged up on again, and made to feel guilty, so I just stopped doing what I was doing, walked out of the house, and went for a long walk up to the nearest grocery store for some comfort food. I called boyfriend, so he wouldn't worry, and told him not to tell her where I was going. She is an entitled person in her own right, and she has no real reason to be. She has no steady work, no money to call her own. She looks at houses in the millions, and talks as if we just won $1 billion. She talks of the future we would have there, like we would just continue living in the same home as her forever. She also thinks that even if we didn't live in the same home as her, she would live next door, and come over whenever she wanted to. She acts polite, and nice, but isn't. She acts like she understands what I went through. Hell, but tries to one-up it. This was just a summary of some of the things she does. Not everything. His mother doesn't like or respect me. So, here is the situation. I have been with my husband for 6 years. We have a 4-year-old daughter together. Her and I haven't really ever gotten along due to the fact that when my husband gets mad, and runs to his mother, and then talks crap about me, he even makes up lies to make me look even worse than what really is going on. He doesn't tell her this crap that he does, just that I am a swine, and argue with him, and adds lies to what he tells her. She barely sees our daughter. She buys stuff for her once in a while, and in fact when he told her we were pregnant she said she didn't want anything to do with the baby. But a few months before she was born she started buying stuff. That was already a red flag. There's things that she has done while having the baby I don't agree with. She obviously doesn't respect me, and takes his word about me when he is talking crap. I really tried with this lady, but I don't know what else to do. I've asked his ass multiple times to stop running to his mother because his parents don't like me, and I know for a fact his mother talks crap to his whole family. I feel very uncomfortable being around any of them because of it. A month ago I reached out to her, and told her I don't want problems, and tried to put effort in the relationship, and took my daughter to see her. Then of course him and I argue days later, and then he goes, and talks crap to her about me yet again. Then she wants my daughter to go over there soon, but if she doesn't respect me, talks crap about me, and doesn't take care of my child how I would like, is it wrong of me to end that relationship, and her interaction with my child? Especially since I put the effort in, and I still get disrespected. What are your thoughts? What are some problems you and your family or friends encountered, that seem like they came out of the blue? Dad ignores birthday for over a decade. Now, he wants to celebrate, and throws a hissy fit when I say no. Debating no contact. My biological mother and I had birthdays that were exactly 5 days apart. On day 3, right in the middle, we'd split the difference, and have a joint celebration. Some years that was a massive party with friends and family, and some years that was cooking our favorite meal, and baking a cake together. But it was always something we were really excited for. She died when I was 13. When I turned 14, Dad said it was too painful to celebrate my birthday without Mom being there. I had the opposite view, that this was a tradition we had and I wanted to use it to remember her. Dad said that our joint birthday just wasn't something he was up to celebrating that year. He later rang round our relatives, and told them that I didn't want to do anything and I had decided I was too old to celebrate my birthday. From my 14th birthday onwards, I have never gotten so much as a happy birthday from anyone. I would use my lunch money to buy a cupcake on my birthday when I was still at school, and as an adult I buy a very expensive, £4 a slice, piece of cake from this very upscale bakery near where I live, and that's the extent of my celebration. In this time, Dad and I grew further apart. We were never close to begin with. I'm a girl, and Dad didn't really know what to do with me. He'd grown up in a house with 4 brothers, and a father, no mother, and was always much more comfortable with my brother, so Dad and I went from being sort of close to pretty much strangers, which got worse when I moved out. Dad has gotten remarried in the last couple of years. They eloped, and I didn't even know he was seeing anyone until after he called me to tell me I now had a stepmother. She has apparently, this is what my brother said, been getting on his back a bit about our relationship, in that I have not seen Dad in person in 4 years because I live in a different country to him. He came to my graduation, and we only really talk 3 times a year, on his birthday, my brother's birthday, and at some point during Hanukkah. Note, we have always celebrated my father and brother's birthdays every single year with large parties. Dad called to ask what we were doing for my 25th birthday in January. I said nothing. He kept pushing because apparently 25 is the big birthday that needs celebrating, because F my 18th, 20th, and 21st, am I right? I eventually said I'd be getting myself a slice of cake which I would eat alone. We got into a bit of a scrap over the phone which ended with him saying fine, we'll get a freaking slice of cake, what else? To which I said nothing, and the cake is kind of a solo activity, you know, like every other birthday I've had in years. Dad then got quiet, and then he said, I was just trying to do something nice, there is no need to go playing the martyr before hanging up. My brother later told me he'd canceled their trip. I am now getting messages from my stepmother, who I have never had a conversation with ever in my entire life, begging me to reconsider. She is clearly on some kind of tourist website for my country, and is saying we could go to tourist attraction, or we could go to famous restaurant. I keep saying no, I am not doing any of that. But she keeps pushing. I am itching to block her. My brother called me asking what was going on from my end. What was the issue? Why wasn't I alright with them coming to see me, and celebrating my birthday, and so on. Dad took the phone out of my brother's hand, and asked again what we were doing when they came to see me for my birthday. I'm already at minimum contact, but I'm honestly so tired of this. There is nothing tying me to them. I have no obligation to be in touch with them except for the biological aspect. I'm already at very low contact, so no contact wouldn't be that drastic a change. The thing that gets me is that there's still not even been an acknowledgement for the last 11 years of bullcrap. It's like he just expects things to be totally smoothed over. I've not said any of this to any of them, but I don't know how. Am I overreacting to think that maybe it's better if just I don't bother with any of them? You can't nurse your baby in the nursing room, so Many shopping malls have feeding rooms in the malls, usually near a food court. I am a new mom, and suffering from postpartum depression. I will feed my baby anywhere if he is that hungry, but for the most part I try to run for the nursing rooms. I don't think feeding my baby in public is bad, and with my postpartum depression, I will either ugly cry or go postal if someone tells me I should let my baby starve because boobs are offensive. I won't know until it happens. Now in the mall closest to us, there is a lovely nursing room with change tables, free diapers on some days, and a family bathroom attached. Now right side is another family bathroom, but this one has these toilets that are made for very small children, so a lot of parents bring their being potty trained kids in. No big deal. I never get any nasty comments, mostly moms cooing at the newborn babies. So about a week ago I was there for my weekly mall walk. As suggested by my caregiver for my PPD, my son starts to signal that he's hungry. My seriously amazing mother-in-law who goes with me every week went to get me a snack in the food court and I began nursing my son. There was only one other woman in there feeding her baby, but the room is shaped like an L because of the family washroom, and she was around the corner. I am feeding him when a woman brings in her toddler to use the family bathroom. The kid notices my baby, and points. "Kid, look mommy, there's a baby." The woman didn't turn, and just nodded her head as she was looking at her cell phone. I smiled at the kid. "Kid, what's his name?" "Me. Oh, his name is Liam." The kid walks up to me, and is about 2 feet away just watching the baby. Doesn't even notice the boob really. He is just smiling, and watching my son feed. The mom looks up from her phone, and gets this sour look on her face. She grabs her kid, and pulled him away. She opens the family room washroom, and puts him in there by himself, and shuts the door. I am a little surprised, but it's none of my business, so I just try to look down at my son, and feed him. She coughs and I look back up. "Kid's mom, do you really need to do that here?" "Me?" Confused. "Here, like in this chair?" Kid's mom, glaring, "No, in this room. This family room. Can't you just go to the ladies' bathroom, and do that?" Now, this room's entrance that has a sign on it that says in big bold letters nursing room, either a figure feeding their child. It happens to have a family washroom inside, but it isn't just a family room. And even if it was, I'm pretty sure breastfeeding I'm more than welcome in the room. Anyway, I'm in shock and I feel my face getting red with embarrassment. Like I said, I am suffering PPD and I have serious doubts about my capabilities of being a mom, despite evidence that says I am doing well. Me said in a hushed whisper, "I think you have been mistaken. This is the nurse." "Kid's mom, why can't you just pump at home, or better yet just use formula? You breastfeeders are always looking for excuses to expose your breasts. You're gonna traumatize my son." I can feel my eyes burning. I hate myself for this because I normally would have let her have it. But before I can say anything, the door opens, and in enters my mother-in-law. She has some food for me, and is staring at this woman. Kid's mom barely looks at my mother-in-law. At this point the other nursing mother has loaded up her child, and leaves the nursing room. My mother-in-law joins me, not realizing what is happening. She does notice my face though, and gasps. "Mother-in-law, huggable crochet. Are you alright?" I shake my head, and a few tears do fall. "Kid's mom, you need to teach your daughter to learn some self-respect. She's exposing herself to children in a public place. She needs to do that in the bathroom." My mother-in-law breastfed in the 90s when it wasn't nearly as common as it is now, and didn't have nursing rooms, and had a ton of pushback for feeding in public when her son, my husband, was hungry. She got pissed, and stood. "Mother-in-law, whatever you said to my daughter-in-law, you better apologize, right the hell now. She is in the nursing room of all places, and if anyone is in the wrong, you are." At this moment the family room bathroom opens up, and her son came out. When he did, his mother grabbed him, and covered his eyes. She is glaring at me again and I am actually crying now, cursing my hormones. I had draped my jacket over my stroller, and she grabbed it, and proceeded to toss it at me, in what I assume was an attempt to cover me up. My mother-in-law stopped the jacket from hitting me or her grandchild. "Mother-in-law, I suggest you leave." Kid's mom is still glaring at me, and hissing about me destroying her son's innocence when the door opens again. A female security guard enters, and looks at us. She takes one look at us, makes eye contact with me, and sees me crying. Kid's mom jumps right in. "Kid's mom, this woman is exposing herself to my son." The security guard was having none of it. We had complaints from another mother that there was a woman shaming a mother for using the nursing facility. "Kid's mom, she is misusing this room. This room is for mothers, and their children to use." "Mother-in-law, she is a mother using it for her child." Security guard, to kid's mom, "I'm going to tell you right now to leave, or I will remove you by force." The poor child starts crying. And he's loud enough. My son lets go of my nipple, and starts crying too. Poor kid was probably scared. But this was too much for kid's mom because my breast was completely exposed now. Kid's mom, see, she's exposing herself. Security guard is clearly having a bad day because she just takes her walkie-talkies and speaks into it. Security guard, I need another security staff to the nursing room. Repeat, I need another security staff to the nursing room. She puts away the walkie when there is a muffled response, and she stares down the kid's mom. Kid's mom is stunned, but is still covering her kid's eyes. I jump into mom mode, and I am trying to calm my son, breast still hanging out. She tries to argue with the security guard, but is getting nowhere. My mother-in-law offers to take my son while I cover myself. I put my bra cup back over my exposed breast, and pull my shirt down. I am still sobbing, but my mother-in-law is able to calm my son, and return him to me. I just want to go and I tell my mother-in-law that. The rest is a blur, but security guard says I can stay, and leave a statement, and they can call the police too about harassment charges. I honestly should have, but I am so embarrassed, and just want to go home. My mental state was pretty far gone. My mother-in-law really thinks I should have stayed, but I just wanted out of there. We ended up leaving just as the other security guard shows up, this one a male. I don't know what happened, but I hope that the kid is alright. He really just looked curious about the baby. Regrettably, I am too nervous to return to the mall. I hate that I let this woman into my head. I can't wait for spring when it will be easier to take my son anywhere. Canadian winters suck. Daughter called crying to have us pick her from a sleepover. I'm concerned, and freaking out. My daughter has been looking forward to going to a sleepover for her friend from kindergarten. We've hosted sleepovers as well with the same group of kids, so I felt totally comfortable. Tonight around 8:30, she called my husband, and asked him to come get her. She was crying, and just kept saying please, please, please. This is really abnormal for her. When we picked her up the mom was cordial, but seemed annoyed she had to stay up. No judgment, I totally get it. When we got home, she begged me to wash her hair, which is rare because she hates hair washing day with a passion. The way we do it is she rinses, and does her first wash, and about 5 minutes I come in, and shampoo. When I went to wash I saw her earrings, little hoops, were gone, and her ears were bright red. When I asked where her earrings were, she started to cry. After her shower I went to tuck her in, and touched her shoulder. She asked me to stop because it hurt. I asked why does it hurt, and she got quiet, and then said Mary's girl who had the sleepover. Big brother hit her a lot, and called her a word we say is bad no matter what, the N-word, because she wouldn't kiss him. I went numb, and went to get her some ice for her shoulder. Told her I loved her, and to not worry that it won't happen again. We snuggled until she fell asleep. It's now midnight, and I'm so upset. My daughter is 5, and I wholeheartedly trust her. She usually brags about her injuries because she was doing something brave, and cool to get them. I don't know what to do. Do I show up at Mary's house, and demand an explanation? Do I call someone because he's 16? I'm lost, and want to be rational. Here's an update. I am grateful for the support. As for my daughter, she's doing well. Back to her normal self. She's a funny kid, so normal is a loose term. This morning, we had an extremely early appointment with a Johns Hopkins affiliate hospital, who provided us with a pediatric doctor who specializes in childhood female trauma, and a non-play-based psychiatrist. The doctors confirmed my daughter's story about being hit, and assured us that there were no signs of other physical assault. We also learned throughout the night she was being bullied by another girl who kept calling her nasty and dark. For the record, my daughter is mixed, and was the only person of color at the party. This girl is the one that ripped out her earrings. I also reached out to Mary's mother. I was surprised how concerned she was when I told her, and said how sorry she was. Her son was only home for about an hour between baseball practice, and his friend picking him up for a concert. I also brought up the fact he hit my daughter, and called her the N-word. She was upset he said these things, but said unfortunately, he mainly lives with father who perpetuates these beliefs. We are now heading to drop our daughter off at her cousin's, who is aware of the situation, while we go to file a police report, and provide them with the doctor's findings. His mother says she will comply, and if she needs to turn him in she will. We will be faxing some paperwork to her school, and will request she not be allowed in a class with Mary next year. After doing all of this, I'm going to take his annex. We let our daughter know how proud we are of her, and that she's so strong that she's helped make sure he won't hit anyone else. Thank you all. Speak English or get out. Background: I'm severely hard of hearing, but consider myself deaf. When your hearing is that shot, you might as well be. I also operate a very small, local deaf meetup group in my local area, which includes a hearing person, one of my roommates, who just seems to enjoy hanging out with us, and we're fine with that. When with the group, I don't wear my hearing aids, as that roommate is usually fine with handling things if and when hearing is needed. He's a trooper. At this particular meetup, which happened this morning at Shoney's for their breakfast, we came across an entitled parent. The story: everyone was seated, casually nomming their favorite breakfast items from the breakfast bar at Shoney's, everyone signing, and giggling back and forth with one another, and enjoying our time together. But we did notice a kid that was nearby bugging my roommate about something. I wouldn't know what's being said until after we arrived home after the meetup, and will include the conversational bits where relevant. Kid: why aren't any of you talking? Roommate: I can talk. They are deaf, and can't hear speech, so we use sign language to talk. Kid: that's cool. Kid runs off, and roommate didn't think anything more of it. It's not uncommon for someone to ask about sign language here or there, or ask us how to say something or get advice on where they can learn the language. Sounds like nothing spectacular so far, I know, but it wasn't until we were ending our little meetup, and start saying our goodbyes when the kid's mother approaches our table. Again, the deafies are just thinking yet another person with a sign language question. The hearie can handle it. Apparently, the kid's mom was so offended that we weren't speaking vocally that she intended to make her opinion known. Kid's mom: you need to stop doing the hand signal stuff, and speak English. It's very rude. Roommate: I'm sorry, what? These guys are deaf, so. Kid's mom cuts him off: I don't care if they are deaf, they can speak English like everyone else in America. Roommate: no, they can't. Literally 2 of these people were born completely deaf, they don't know what English even remotely sounds like. Kid's mom: it's not my fault they are retarded, they should still speak English. And you too, stop messing about with your hands, it's very rude. Roommate: it's very rude to insist people with a disability to cater to your sensibilities, and honestly I wish I were deaf myself, so I wouldn't have to hear the screeching of a heartless swine with less than 2 brain cells to rub together. Kid's mom: you can't speak like that around children. She ends up huffing and running off. At this point though, she's gotten the attention of everyone at our meetup. We all were thinking that was the end of it, and the roommate signed to us telling us crazy lady thinks we're throwing gang signs, and other stupid stuff. Everything's fine. Well, turns out kid's mom ended up getting the manager demanding we be kicked out. So enter manager stage left. Manager arrives at the table with kid's mom, and the poor kid in tow. Kid's mom having looking smug like she just accomplished something huge. Manager: I've got a complaint that your entire party has been rude, and cussing. The manager notices sign language being used, and asks the kid's mom: ma'am, do you know what they are saying? Kid's mom: no, not at all. They are not speaking English, which is very rude. We're in America, and in America we speak English. Roommate swears this is what she said, and since we do live in the sticks I wouldn't put it past that someone would say something like this. Manager: ma'am, we can't kick people out for not speaking English. Kid's mom: but they are insulting me, and my kid, just look at them. At this point it's worth noting that when we're discussing something, or someone, if the object of discussion is available, they are pointed at. At no point in our discussion did we point at the kid's mom nor her kid. What we were talking about was various subjects, from cats, to the gal we got recently invited from Walmart talking about wanting to get a fish tank, and a small fighter beta, and other places they'd like to go for the next meetup. So nothing involving the kid's mom nor her kid. Roommate actually points to one of us: she's talking about getting a fish tank, and getting a beta fish. Points to me: he's getting information on where the next meetup might take place. Points to the black guy: he's talking about a kitten he recently adopted. Points to the kid's mom, and she's being rude, insisting deaf people need to stop using sign language to accommodate her sensibilities. The manager surprisingly signs to the group asking if we found everything to our liking. We all practically say yes to some degree. Yes, okay, etc. different signs. The manager proceeds to inform the kid's mom that she'll need to leave us alone or he will have to ask her to leave. She apparently continued to complain about how we continued to sign after all this, and was asked to leave. She did, and apparently screamed how she's never coming back. The manager gave us 10% off our bills, except the roommate who dealt with the brunt of it, who got his meal free. DLDR, curious kid was interested in what sign language was, and why it was used. Good kid. Kid's mom thought it was rude for the deaf to use sign language instead of speaking English so she could understand our conversation. Gets manager involved thinking she could have deaf people kicked out for being deaf. Gets herself kicked out. When has someone really stepped out of line? How did you handle it, and what advice do you need? Mother-in-law might be dosing my kid. So, my son just said my mother-in-law gave him sleeping pills. I have 2 kids, a 4-year-old, and a 7-year-old. The 7-year-old's father is not involved. and the 4-year-old is my husband's biological child. Mother-in-law has always been a toxic mother-in-law, since day one. When I suggested that maybe she shouldn't have a key to her 28-year-old son's house. When dear husband, 34 now, and I got married, and the 4-year-old came along, I figured she'd realize that while she's not my biggest fan, I am her son's wife and the mother of her grandchild, and I'm not going anywhere. While the 7-year-old isn't related to dear husband has taken on a fatherly role. We've been together 6 years, and he views the 7-year-old as his son, and the 7-year-old thinks of him as his father. Although we have explained that they aren't related, by extension, he thinks of dear husband's parents as his grandparents, and father-in-law has told 7-year-old to call him granddad, which he does. Mother-in-law is decidedly less nice to the 7-year-old in general because they're not related. Dear husband has talked to her about it, and she's played nice while dear husband is there, but only when he's there. We agreed to just not let mother-in-law around 7-year-old at all. A couple weeks ago my sister got into a car accident. I got a call from the hospital Saturday morning asking me to come in. Dear husband was about 5 hours away and I had no one nearby able to watch them. I called father-in-law, and he said to bring the kids by. I dropped the kids at their place, and went to the hospital, then let dear husband know. Dear husband picked up the kids as soon as he could, and took them home. My sister was released in a few days. She's fine now, just a couple of broken bones, and they were fairly clean breaks, and should be healed soon. But on the day of the crash it got really scary. Anyway, the point of the post. I went to Boots, the chemist, today to pick up some stuff, and brought the kids. We walked past some medications, and 7-year-old points at a box of Nitol, and asks if we can get that. I ask why he wants that. He says that mother-in-law gave it to him the day I left them at her house, and he's saying this completely straight-faced. I talked to dear husband and, like me, at first he thought 7-year-old was kidding, but he quickly realized he wasn't. I asked dear husband if he remembered anything weird about 7-year-old that day, and he said 7-year-old was a bit groggy, which was weird for him as dear husband got to him around midday on Saturday, and he seemed like he'd just woken up when dear husband arrived. Now, I'm not saying 7-year-old is some perfect angel. He is, on the whole, a good kid, and he'd never hurt a fly, but he has told some fibs in the past. I've not spoken to mother-in-law about it, but if she has dosed the 7-year-old I can't see her owning up to anything. I want to believe my son, but I can't believe anyone would dose a 7-year-old with sleeping pills, especially as father-in-law was there, and surely he would have noticed something? I'm not sure what's gone on, if anything, and I need to figure out what's gone on before I figure out how to deal with this. Obviously if she's dosed my kid, then we're talking at least no contact. But if nothing has happened, then this isn't something I should be worrying about. I think I'm too close to it, and I need someone to tell me that either I'm crazy or my mother-in-law is the crazy one. Any ideas? Also, forget this whole section. He's my son, he wouldn't lie about this, I believe him. The time for silence has ended. I'm not biting my tongue anymore. I'm sick of your crap. It's funny how much we, or rather some of us, let our mother-in-law, and bio-moms for that matter, get away with before we finally snap. Well, I just snapped. And I'm Canadian, so I was still polite about it. Here's some backstory. My mother-in-law is downright cruel at times, expects me to be a mind reader, so if I don't do something that I had no idea she wanted and expected me to do, I'm a piece of crap. She has called me, to my bio-mom, freaking useless. Here's some backstory on her bull crap. Myself and my wife bought a property specifically with a back house for my mother-in-law to live in without fear of eviction or anything else. She now lives there for free. There was a rent agreement, but she stopped paying due to layoffs and health issues, and I make enough money that it really didn't bother me. We have a 5-year-old with special needs, autism, and we just had a preemie 9 days ago. She lived in our house while we renovated the back house to make it better for her. She complained the whole time she lived there, flat out said that she can't stand living with us, and even threatened to move out, which meant no more paying rent, because the back house wasn't being renovated fast enough. When it comes to basically anything, her take is that she's the only one who knows what she's doing, everyone else is stupid, and doesn't know their elbow from their ass, so if it's not done her way, it's wrong. God forbid I do anything with my son that isn't playing outside, or I'm a piece of crap dad. Her point of view changes day to day. If it suits her, it's fine for my son to stay inside by himself for extended periods of time because he's old enough to not get in trouble. But when it's a chance to criticize me, he's 5, and he doesn't know better. She had a secret meeting with my bio-mom after we found out my wife was pregnant again, which my bio-mom recorded, and showed me a few snippets of. She told my bio-mom a bunch of lies about the kind of parents we are, and tried to manipulate my bio-mom into coming over to her house to clean it. Like, what the F is that? She doesn't know that the conversation was recorded, and that I know it happened. I've been sitting on that info for a few months now. I've never received a thank you for buying a property specifically so she could live in her own place with some sense of security. I've never received a thank you for pouring over $20,000 into renovating it, or for letting her stay in it rent-free. Not once. And I still tried to be nice. Oh boy did I try. Shoveling her driveway for her, biting my tongue when I'd rather tell her to eat crap. Tonight I made chicken, a specific type of chicken that she really enjoys. I offered her some, she accepted. She comes over, and right as she walks in the door, it begins. She gave us a bottle of hand sanitizer she was able to buy, but at giving it to me she basically said indirectly that I don't know how to wash my hands and I need to use the sanitizer. Oh, I'll use it. But listen lady, we're in the middle of a pandemic and I have a preemie newborn. I know how to wash my hands. She shoots me this crap-eating grin, and if you say so. Strike two. Earlier today she came over, and my son was playing, and didn't say much to her, because again he's special needs, and it's just how he is sometimes. I come downstairs from grabbing something from my bedridden wife, and hear her call my son a doofus. Not in a joking way. I told her not to call him that. Crap-eating grin as she walks upstairs to see our newborn. That was strike one. After supper, and spending some time with our newborn, my wife asked who was going to feed him, but mother-in-law had something in the oven at her place, and had to go turn it off, so I offered to feed him. Of course, I am his dad. Which seemed fine, and she left. Then I get a text, meant for my wife, is there some reason he doesn't want me feeding him? Because that's twice now. Strike three. I snapped. I normally ignore those texts, and just go on with my day, but I've had enough of her crap, so I chose my words and I told her maybe because he's my baby and I like feeding him. It actually has nothing to do with you. Pretty sure you also said you had to go turn your oven off. Not all that bad, right? The reply, watch what you say to me. You need to learn some freaking respect. I didn't respond because I've gotten under her skin now. A reply to that at this point would simply be giving her what she wants. She wants a fight. I'd rather let her stew for a while. The entire status quo is about to change, and she's in for a rude awakening. I just took away any power she thought she had. No more walking into my house, taking control of what my son is doing or how he's doing it, and then telling me if you knew what you were doing I wouldn't have to do it when I tell her she can't tell us what to do. No more biting my tongue to keep the peace. I can't kill her with kindness, so it's time to fight, fire, with fire. Rant over. Wife and I have been married 11 years. But I've never met my mother-in-law. She refuses to acknowledge me because I'm the second spouse. Fun fact, so is she, and I'm not the right ethnicity. Father-in-law has come twice. He is nice, but still a machista you have to serve. Now, he wants to come visit in July. It's been at least 4 to 5 years since wife has seen father-in-law, but in-laws regularly visit wife's ex-spouse. In-laws stay with the ex, and their new spouse for vacations, Christmas. They do have grandchildren there however, but don't they also have grandchildren here? I digress. My mom is moving back from overseas in July. Yesterday she called to ask about going to see an apartment for her. It's 7 minutes from our house. Wife tells me why does she have to move here? She's a pain in the ass. She's always gonna be up your ass. This is the same woman who I've had to ask for money to turn our electricity back on, within the last year. The same woman who paid for our daughter's gym/tumbling tuition. She bought 75 to 80% of their clothes, and still does. I reminded wife that their family can't be bothered with us, never sent a card to our girls much less call or see them. 2 years ago we almost divorced because wife was physical again. My mom drove my girls and I around, hid me, checked under the car for tracking devices, went with me to the DA's office to listen to all the crap that had happened over a decade. The audacity to complain about the person who still stands by me, and helps us? I'm not looking forward to July. I don't want wife's dad here because he doesn't deserve access to us. I'm not looking forward to my mom coming home because I know wife will make it difficult to help and see her. I don't want July to come. That sounds awful. I don't even know what advice to ask for. I walk around in circles because I know the agonizing is my own fault. I understand now why my ex-friend said I liked it. I don't like it. I'm just too scared to make any moves after the last time. I guess I want to know how to stay unmoved when they're saying things like I never asked her for help, even though we did on multiple occasions. Anything helps, techniques or phrases I can tell myself that maybe worked for you, or how you were less anxious when you know things like this are coming. Narcissus wants to watch my daughter while father and I get divorced. My daughter is 2.5 years old. When she was 18 months old my mother-in-law, Narcissus, looked after her alone, and she got my daughter's ears pierced with a piercing gun at the mall. I asked her what exactly possessed her to do that to my child, and she said that my daughter's hair was too short so she made her look girlier, and she called me a hypocrite as I had my ears pierced. but wasn't willing to do the same for my daughter. I told her that I got my ears pierced at 18 in a professional piercing place, and she had no right to do that. But Narcissus said that she was responsible for my daughter at the time, so it was her choice, and that my daughter would probably want her ears pierced eventually anyway. The piercings got infected, and the general practitioner advised taking them out after the infection cleared up, so I did. Narcissus is still upset that the piercings were removed, and wants to get them redone by the same store. I banned Narcissus from seeing my daughter, and no contact was upheld for about 3 weeks, at which point my soon-to-be ex-husband invited her over. To this day there has been no expression of guilt from her, and no shiny spine from soon-to-be ex-husband, which is part of the reason he's a soon-to-be ex. Since then Narcissus has been aware that she's on wafer thin ice with me, and has not done anything harmful or detrimental to my daughter since X and I look to be on the rocks. However, I am fairly confident in stating that the reason she hasn't done anything harmful or detrimental to my daughter is that she has yet to be left alone with her. I've not left Narcissus alone with my daughter at all in the past year, just in case she tries something. X and I need to go sign divorce papers on Friday. Everything is ironed out, and we won't be fighting. It's just a matter of signing the agreed terms. Narcissus has gotten in touch, knowing Friday is my work from home day, and the day my daughter does not go to daycare, and has said that if we want someone to watch her while we sign papers, she is more than happy to look after her, and has said they can have a girl's day. If Narcissus did watch her, then I'd need to bring my daughter to her an hour before the meeting, and Narcissus would bring her back whenever. Her exact words, "I'll bring her back whenever I'm ready," which does not sound good. There is no one else available to watch my daughter, and she's not booked into daycare during the time I will be with the lawyers. I asked the daycare if there was any way we could extend her hours, but they said all changes needed to be 2 weeks in advance, and I only got the time and date for signing the papers yesterday, so my options are leaving my daughter alone with Narcissus, and hoping she doesn't come back with freshly pierced ears, or taking her with me to sign papers. Update: I rang to ask about the logistics of bringing kiddo with me, and turns out they have a kids area which is pretty much a playmat, and some Legos supervised by a receptionist meant specifically for kids whose parents are busy signing stuff. X and I could even take turns signing papers, and checking on kiddo. It's time to get out of here. Typing with a lot of fury here, so I'm so done living with my mother and brothers. They just make me realize how awful and terrible having a family is. My mother is a PhD, and seems to only focus on her honors and achievement. She really loves my little brother, and always says she loves him more than the other. She always says he's more handsome, kind, etc. blah blah than the other. She only sees me as a helper so I can carry on her business while she could just do other things. When trouble comes at the business, and I ask her for advice, she always said, "I figured that one by myself, why couldn't you?" But in the other hand, she always says you should learn from me when I'm alive and stuff. Then when the time comes to ask for her advice, she gave me nothing. I've been feeling like this since I'm 15. I went away from home for uni, then my life was a little bit peaceful without my family by my side. But since I graduated, and obligated to carry on my family business, I have to come back. Then I began to feel again that I want family whatsoever. Beyond that, there was a big dispute between my mother and my past father's brothers and sisters about the wealth of the family. I am always the one in the middle, hearing craps from both sides, not knowing what to do or who's wrong or right. For all I know, everywhere I go I see hell in family. So, I just don't want to create hell on my own later in my life. So after this pandemic is over, I'm going to England to pursue my master's degree, then bye-bye. My family won't ever see me again. What is a family tragedy that you will never forget? My wife and I are having a hard time coping with her cheating on me with our much older neighbor. TLDR, I caught my wife cheating on me over a year ago. I stayed with her for the sake of our children, but I haven't been able to get it off of my mind since. It has been 476 days since I confronted her about it. How do I know? Because every time I catch myself thinking about it, I tell myself, it's only been X days, maybe you won't think about it tomorrow. So to go back to the beginning, I had just taken on a new project and new responsibilities at work. I was working a lot of hours, 60 plus per week, and was noticeably stressed. It was in July of 2015 that I noticed that she had added a password to her phone. When confronted about it, she told me it was because she was planning my Father's Day present and didn't want me to ruin the surprise. About a week later, she came to me and told me that she felt guilty keeping a big secret from me, and told me that she was having our neighbor, a contractor, build a home office for me as my present. It struck me as odd, as in our 7 years together she has never said she felt guilty about anything and always insists that she never regrets anything in her life. Time goes on. Her phone is still password protected, and things don't feel right. I see her using her phone and smiling to herself more and more often, but when I ask her what she is doing she says, nothing, and puts her phone away. So one morning I wait for her to get in the shower and I grab her phone before it requires the password. I go through her messages and find that she is texting the neighbor. I am all covered in frosting. You wanna lick it off? There were no other messages to the neighbor, but I found out later that was because she had set up her phone to delete messages after a certain amount of time. I felt uncomfortable with it, but I knew she had a perverted sense of humor, and I thought she would never do anything to hurt me. More time goes by and the neighbor is spending more and more time at our house, but the office is being completed slower and slower. I can't help but worry that something isn't right, so I start checking her location using Google Timeline. It was at this point that I realized that there are large gaps in her GPS history because she was turning off her phone's GPS. Fast forward to July. At this point the paranoia is driving me nuts, so I tell her that I need to install new antivirus on her phone. While she has it unlocked for me, I install anti-theft software, so I can remotely turn the GPS back on and set up the AT&T message backup and restore service, so I can read all of her text messages from that point on my computer. The next day my mother asks to spend time with my 2 kids, so my wife drops them off with her and has the day to herself. I watch my wife's activity from work as she spends the day trying to meet up with a neighbor, but is unsuccessful because he is busy with another job site. That night we get the kids back from my mom's house and we go out to dinner with the neighbor, his girlfriend, and his son. My wife and his girlfriend are having a good time drinking, laughing, and just joking around. His girlfriend mentions that she would like to see Magic Mike XXL. I say it's a good idea. I'll watch the kids so my wife and her can go. So my wife and her go, and the neighbor and I go back to my house so the kids can play video games together. The kids are back in my son's room playing games and the neighbor is sitting across from me on the other couch. It is at this point that my wife starts texting him. She is describing sex acts she would like to perform with him and he is reciprocating. She tells him to check his Snapchat and at the same time I get a Snapchat from her too, and it is her doing provocative things in a bathroom stall. They keep talking, trying to figure out when they can meet up and have sex. They decide on Monday morning after I go to work, so in my head I had already planned to pretend to leave and circle back to catch them. But then they tell each other that they love each other and it is all I can do to not leap off the couch and knock him out. But I contain myself and continue reading the conversation unfolding in front of me. Then he tells her, "You're my girl now," to which she replies, "Always have been," ending with him writing, "and always will be." My wife and the neighbor's girlfriend return from the movie, and I ask them, politely, to sit down. I then ask the kids to stay in my son's room and shut the door. I return to the living room and confront my wife and the neighbor. I say, "So you two love each other, huh?" My wife goes into full-blown denial mode and the neighbor's girlfriend starts smacking him. I ask my wife if she has been texting him. She says no. So I show her the text messages. She admits to it but says it was the first time it had gone that far. I ask my wife if she has sent him pictures. She says no. So I show her the picture. She admits it but says it was the first time. I ask her if she is having sex with him and she says no. Because I didn't wait to catch them having sex together. I didn't have evidence to prove her wrong, so that one stayed unresolved. I tell her that I am leaving her. She tells me that she will make sure I never see my kids again if I do. She planned on using the fact that I had attempted suicide in high school to prove me unfit to have the children. She continues to say that it was my fault for being so busy with work and stressed out, that she just wanted someone she could talk to. Then she gives me an ultimatum to decide what I'm going to do or she will decide for me. The neighbor's girlfriend starts defending the two of them, saying that it couldn't have been serious if they weren't having sex, and that my wife and I are too perfect together to let this break us up. The neighbors go home and my wife and I argue for the rest of the night about what we are going to do. We go to bed separately, having not resolved anything. We keep going back and forth on the subject all weekend. We finally settle on, we were going to separate temporarily while we figure out what we want. I was going to stay in the house and she was going to take the kids and go to her mom's house. That Monday I go to work, and I get a text from her in the middle of a meeting with my bosses stating that she had explained things to our kids, but that they were upset and I need to explain it to them also. I get home from work to find my kids crying. She had told them that mommy had to move out because dad was mad at her. When my son wanted to stay with me, she told him that he can't. My son put it together that if mommy has to move out because I'm mad at her and he must move out, then I must have been mad at him too. My daughter was crying because my son was crying. I don't think she was old enough to understand what was happening. It was at that moment I realized she was going to drag the kids through hell if I left her. So I swallowed my feelings and begged her to stay. She agreed and insisted that I apologize to our neighbor since we were still going to need to hang out with them because our sons are good friends. I hate it but I do it anyway. We still hang out with them from time to time and they come to our various birthday and holiday parties. But I do anything for my kids and I behave civil every time. Things die down for a while. I still think about it constantly. I worry how can I keep from making her so unhappy that she cheats on me again. Then almost a year from the original incident, around Father's Day again, she sent him pictures again. She claims it was an accident that she meant to send them to me instead. I don't fully believe her but I move on anyway. Things have been quiet on that front for about 4 months now, but I still think about it constantly. This might sound stupid, but I feel like I have a part of my brain that I can't shut off, that is always thinking. I used to use that to solve programming problems, and it made me very good at my job. But ever since this incident, the only thing it thinks about is her and him, and if I did the right thing, my job performance has suffered, and I feel like I haven't gotten sleep in months. I'm afraid that after this much time, and the fact that I begged her back, that to say that I want a divorce now would only make her more vindictive towards my children and I just feel like I have put myself so deep in a hole that I can never get back out. I haven't really talked to anyone about this. I didn't want to talk to my mom about it because I felt she would treat my wife differently and I didn't need the two fighting any more than they already do. I tried talking to one friend about it but his advice was to put my trust in God. But that was not much solace for me, as I am an atheist, so I have no clue what to do with my feelings or how to move on from this. Update. After receiving advice from everyone, we will try counseling. Another update. Instead of trying to fix something she doesn't want to fix, as she has refused counseling several times in the past before this even happened, I am going to get myself and my kids out. I meet with an attorney next week. Thank you all so much for giving advice. Interruption. TTS reads here, after he filed divorce, she stabbed and killed both kids. Here is a picture we found of husband and the kids, link 1 in description. Here is her 911 call after these tragic events. Link 2 in description. In the audio clip, the wife tells police that she killed her 2 children because she did not want her husband to take them away from her. Her exact quote was, "I did not want him taking them, so I stabbed them. I just wanted to die with them." So before making the call, the wife traveled to a local store and bought a hunting knife. She returned home, woke up her kids, and ended their lives. The entire time the husband was sleeping in the basement, with no knowledge of the dreadful events taking place above his head. Understandably, the 911 dispatcher wanted to verify the story from the wife, so he got in touch with the wife's mother and asked her to go to the house and check on the kids. Tragically, the husband woke to mother-in-law's screams, and the realization that he would never see his kids alive again. He confronted his wife, who covered in blood, screamed at him, "No, you cannot take them away from me." Police arrived soon after, questions were asked, trials were held, during which, the wife had a calm, unemotional attitude. Ultimately, the wife was sentenced to 120 years in prison. The family is still recovering, and the husband has shared final updates. Here are the updates. I am doing better, and I continue to get better every day. I guess the first question to answer is how am I doing? And to that I would say I am doing well. I have bad days, but I would think that is to be expected. It is just important that I, or anyone going through something, continue to use the support of friends and family as well as good coping skills to not let myself be completely defeated on those bad days. I won't lie, I struggled to get back to where I am. For some time, I refused to sleep because of a combination of fear of what I would wake up to, and nightmares about that night. For a time I used alcohol to sleep, but my family loved me enough to take it from me before it became a damaging and permanent habit. I was hospitalized because I did have thoughts of ending my life because I missed my children so much. From that I learned that you should never be ashamed of your mental health, and not seeking treatment will only make it worse, not better. We have all heard it. But if you or a loved one is struggling, seek immediate assistance. Your life is too important to throw away in a moment of weakness. By putting off treatment I only caused everything else in my life to suffer. I lost my job and became reclusive to the house. But don't worry, I have been back to work since December and I have nearly regained my former position and salary, so I am good and require no assistance. The second question would be, how do I feel about the sentencing? That is something that is harder to answer, because no matter what the sentence, nothing will bring back my beloved children. Do I think she should have gotten the death penalty, which my state has? No, I do not. She wanted to die, and after 9 years of giving her what she wanted, when she wanted it, I was not going to give her another thing. Do I think the life sentence will have any appreciable effect on her? I don't know. One thing she always stressed for the entire time that I knew her was that she lived her life without any regrets. Even after I caught her cheating on me, she continued to say she had no regrets. As for the ex-in-laws, they continue to be a problem to this day. Shortly after everything happened, They changed the locks on the home I was renting from them with my property still inside. After trying to civilly negotiate the return of the property, it was required that I involve law enforcement. That is an ongoing legal battle. A member of the family accused me of stealing property I had purchased from them prior to the death of the children, and threatened to take action against me unless I paid double what I had already paid them. I alerted the authorities, and as far as I know, that is resolved. They continue to make visiting my children's grave difficult. During the 1-year anniversary, they sat in their truck and just watched me the whole time I was visiting the grave. Because of that, I don't visit the grave as often as I would like to. If I can impart on you something I have learned through all of this, it is that you should always take the time to be with the ones you love. It doesn't matter if they are asking you to read The Pokey Little Puppy for the millionth time or asking you to play Smash Brothers, even though you both know they will wipe the floor with you every time. Just do it because you never know what time will be the last time. Always make sure they know how much you love them. Thankfully, I had the fortune that the last thing my children ever heard me say was, "I love you, good night, and I will see you in the morning." Am I unreasonable for being topless at home? I have a son, 4 months old, I'm breastfeeding, and he's forever spitting up on me, and we're trying to give as much skin-to-skin contact as possible. Because of this, I've pretty much stopped wearing clothes at home. I'll wear them when I go out, obviously, but in the privacy of mine and my boyfriend's flat I just go bare-chested. My in-laws were meant to come by around 6 p.m. and instead came by over an hour early, and let themselves in with the spare key. I was sleeping on the sofa with my son on my chest. They saw everything. I woke up to them yelling at me to put a shirt on, and asking why I didn't do that sooner if I knew they'd be over today. I maintained that they were a full hour early, and why on earth would they just let themselves in when I didn't answer the door? My boyfriend wants me to apologize. I refuse. Who's the unreasonable one here? Also, I know of my sleeping situation as being a risk of suffocation and SIDS. Please know that I am fully aware of this, and I'm taking all measures to avoid any injury or death of my child. This was a one-off event after he fell asleep on top of me, and we napped for less than an hour, probably closer to half an hour. I appreciate the concern, but this is the only time it's happened, and it won't be happening again. Conclusion: I caved because they are the only people I have close by right now. My boyfriend is mad at me for making things awkward, and my in-laws are annoyed by what they saw, so I just called them and apologized. Going forward, I will assume they will be early, and not nap or be shirtless on days they are coming in case they arrive ahead of time. Am I the unreasonable one for letting my 7-year-old daughter call my husband daddy, against the wishes of her biological father, my ex-husband? My ex-husband left me when I was 2 months pregnant. When my daughter turned 4 months old, he married his current wife. I met my husband when my daughter was 2 years old, and married him when she turned 3. My daughter is now 7 years old and I have a 3-year-old son with my husband. My ex has 2 daughters with his wife, who are 6 and 4. My ex has an every other weekend visitation with our daughter. Now, my daughter used to call my husband Poppy, but ever since the birth of my son, my daughter has started calling my husband Daddy. That's what I call my husband when I address him in front of my son, and my daughter has kind of picked up on that. We never told her no, because my husband loves my daughter, and thinks of her as his own. He has stayed up nights taking care of her the times she has been sick. Now, she doesn't have the same relationship with her stepmother. She has always called her stepmother by her actual first name, and it has always been that way, even though her stepmother has known her for a longer time than my husband. Here's why I'm wondering if I'm the unreasonable one. The other night, when me and my husband went to pick up my daughter from her dad's, my daughter ran out of their door happily saying, "Mommy and Daddy are here, I'm going home." When my ex heard her address my husband as Daddy, he turned visibly upset. Later when we got home, my ex blew up on my phone saying that I was emotionally abusing my daughter by making her call another man Daddy, and that I needed to make her stop. I said that our daughter has all the right to call my husband Daddy if it makes her happy. He then asked me how I'd feel if he made our daughter call his wife Mommy. I told him that if my daughter hasn't called her Mommy after 6 years of knowing her, it is because she never wanted to. I said that it isn't my fault if our daughter feels closer to her stepfather, and actually loves our family together. After saying that, I hanged up. The next day my ex-mother-in-law called me accusing me of parental alienation. This is honestly messing with my mind. My husband loves my daughter. Is it really bad if we let her call him Daddy? He loves it, and in fact, he always says that he has 2 kids. Am I the unreasonable one for not letting a family member I barely know drive my expensive car in an emergency? I was at my in-laws' house yesterday, alone with their goddaughter. We'll call her Ashley. She's 28, while my husband was out doing stuff with his parents to discuss important family matters. I was already feeling pretty stressed and anxious about how their conversation was going to go. I don't really have a great relationship with Ashley, so I was just keeping to myself in one of the guest rooms on my laptop with a large glass of wine. About an hour later she comes in, panicked, asking if she can borrow my car. Apparently, her high school-age sister got in a really bad fight with their extremely dysfunctional father, and needed to be picked up. My car is a new Mercedes that cost me around 80 grand. I absolutely did not want her taking my car, especially somewhere that was almost an hour away. I asked her if their dad got physical with her sister in this fight, and she said no. So, I told her I would rather her wait until my in-laws got back, and see if she could take their car. She starts yelling at me that they probably won't be back for a few hours, and she needs to get her sister ASAP. I told her that unless she believes her sister's safety is at risk, I don't feel comfortable with her taking my car. She asked if I could drive her to get her and I told her I had too much wine to drive. She then proceeds to crap on me for being irresponsible for drinking, and not anticipating I might have to drive, as well as selfish for not letting her take my car. When they get back, she asks to take their car, and makes a huge deal about how I wouldn't let her take mine. She goes on about how my fancy car is more important than a child in crisis. I told them she said the girl wasn't in any danger, and she tells me to F off before she gets in their car to leave. My in-laws said she's just being an overprotective big sister, and not to worry about it. When my husband was driving us home he told me I made the right call because Ashley is a very reckless driver, and totaled a car a couple years ago after driving too fast. However, the next morning my in-laws text me that Ashley was incredibly upset and I should have just let her take my car. So, am I the unreasonable one here? Like I said, she told me the kid wasn't in any danger. I feel like I'm being shat on for having boundaries. Am I off base? My ex, we'll call him Dave, found me on social media the other week and wanted me back in his life. It's been 7 years since we've been together and I have no intention of taking him back. I met Dave my freshman year of college. My parents and his mom did not approve of our relationship so we had to date secretly. This lasted about 9 months. The first 2 months was good but then when we came back for our second semester he changed. He became more clingy and wanted to know where I was almost all the time. It especially got bad when I went on a trip and hung out with a guy friend most of the time. He read my private messages between me and my mother. She told me she thought he was controlling and Dave thought she didn't like him because he was a different race from me. He even told me one time that he thought my father was darker skinned than he is, which is 110% not true. The worst was when it came to sexual stuff. He would constantly ask me for a sexual mouth favor. Whenever I said no he would convince me otherwise. Oh well, I pleased you yesterday, so now you have to. You owe me for doing XYZ etc. It sucks so badly. He even kissed another girl while we were together. She was a part of a play he was in and constantly flirted with him, even though she knew he was taken. He would later end up in her bed shortly after we broke up. One instance that sticks out and has permanently scarred me is the week before our final exams. I had been helping out a friend with her senior project. It was a dance club, and we had practice every other evening. One night I was running late to practice and I got a text from Dave. He told me that in the sunlight you could see my blue and green striped panties through my leggings. I didn't care at the time because I was late and texted him. Not a single F was given that day. It wasn't a long walk to where I was practicing so I really didn't care if someone saw. After practice I went to his dorm room. The door was locked, so I went to the other side door since I was good friends with his roommates. There I saw him standing with his roommates looking very pissed. He told me we had to talk. I don't remember much of the conversation because I was crying the entire time. I remember him telling me he's gonna break up with me. There were things in there about my parents but I don't remember what they were exactly. After about 10 minutes and my roommate and best friend at the time comforting me and trying to help, Dave stood in front of me. He then said to me, "You know what? No. We're not gonna break up. We're gonna stay together, forever, get married and have children, and raise them in a little white padded room in straitjackets." He then got closer to me and whispered in my ear, "Wouldn't you like that?" He then grabbed me by my shoulders and repeated the question. I screamed, "Stop, don't touch me, you're scarring me." He told me he was just playing around. I knew that wasn't joking, that was real. Dave then picked up a pair of scissors and threatened to cut himself in front of me. I grabbed his arms and told him not to do it. He then threatened to cut me. I told him I didn't care if he did. He then threw the scissors across the room and held me. The rest of the night was a blur to me and I hope it stays that way. I didn't return to college for personal reasons. Dave came to see me once that summer. Then one day I tried to sneak out and got caught with him. I was immediately grounded and had my laptop and phone taken from me. When I did have my phone my parents would monitor what I was doing / who I was talking to. Dave has tried to call me but I wouldn't pick up because I didn't want my parents hearing me. Finally at the end of July Dave broke up with me. Within 2 weeks he had a new girlfriend. I tried to move on. I started seeing a therapist and was diagnosed with major depression and general anxiety disorder, and I was put on medication soon after. I started to feel better when I got a call from Dave. He told me that I would hear a rumor that wasn't true. The rumor was that he had raped a girl. At first I believed him that it was a rumor, then I figured out who the girl was. I'm bisexual and had fallen for a girl, we'll call her Tina, while I was dating Dave. Tina was the girl and she called me crying telling me what happened. I believed her immediately but let it slide. I don't know why. I went on with life and soon met my amazing boyfriend. I have told him everything about Dave over time. However, in our first month of dating I wasn't sure if we'd last. During that time Dave told me he'd be in my area and wanted to meet. So I snuck out, successfully, and met up with Dave. The second I saw him I knew I didn't want to be there. Dave has this possessive look in his eyes like that's right, you're mine. That scared me. I stayed with him for about an hour. During this time we did sexual things in the back of my car. I pretended to like it so it would satisfy him and he'd leave me alone. When it was done, I went home and showered. I remember during that shower I realized I didn't want this guy in my life and wanted to be with my boyfriend. I later told my boyfriend about what Dave did to me in the back of my car. He never shamed me for it because he knew I didn't want anyone besides him. He forgave me and we have not talked about it since. Previously, I had given Dave my boyfriend's number because he just wanted to talk to him and tell him he's lucky to have me. That was a damn lie. Dave catfishes my boyfriend by pretending to be a girl from my boyfriend's college. This went on for about 3 weeks, but thankfully my boyfriend never questioned our relationship. Dave called my boyfriend once and my boyfriend didn't listen and just continued playing the game he was playing. Dave would constantly tell me to break up with my boyfriend. I had told him no a few times and he was angry. Once he got so angry and I lied saying I broke up with him. It felt like he wanted me all to himself even though he had a girlfriend at the time. After a few more months of harassment from Dave, long late night phone calls that I didn't want, another meetup that had sexual stuff, showing up to my retail job and demanding I kiss him, he finally said goodbye to me. I told my mom the next day that we had to change my phone number. I deleted my Instagram and started a new one. I blocked his number and his Facebook so he couldn't find me. About 2 years pass and I'm starting to move on. Still have the same BF and I'm starting to manage my depression better. Dave found me on Facebook under a different profile. He apologized to me and I forgave him. I thought this would be the end of it but no. A few weeks later he messaged me and told me he loved me, that he wanted me to break up with my boyfriend, that he was bipolar, which I kinda already knew. I told him no and goodbye. I blocked that profile too. Fast forward to a few weeks ago. I am now 26, still with the same guy. We live together, I have a career, and we're gonna get married in the future. Now, I woke up to a message on my Instagram. It's Dave. He wanted to make sure I was okay during this pandemic. He didn't care if I answered or not. He wanted to be my friend and wanted another chance. All I said to him was stop. I told him that I had finally moved on from everything he'd done to me, all the nightmares he gave me, the panic attacks, the strain on my relationship with my family. I reminded him about the children and straitjackets comment and he told me that he said that to stop me from cutting myself. Bullcrap. He also told me to consider what my family had done to him for not accepting him. He then told me that we could help each other. I told him that he wanted to control me and that my family didn't like him because of that. He thought it was his skin color. I swear to you all it was not. He then told me that he took a lot from my family because he was thinking about our feelings. I told him about 10 times I do not want you in my life ever again. I told him not to contact me or look for me. He then asked me if I still loved him. My words were, at first, I did but now I don't. There were even times I absolutely despised you. Now, I feel nothing for you. He then asked if I still had to work, and I simply said goodbye and blocked him. Now I am stronger than ever. I know what I want and it's not him. If he tried to contact me again, I will go to the police and start the process of getting a restraining order. Because this isn't even about protecting me anymore. It's about protecting my family and those I love. Dave made me realize my worth. I am not someone's toy that gets to play with whenever. I am someone who deserves love and respect. I know I didn't get that from him. I have had a few nightmares since that conversation. However, I know I'm better off with him out of my life. Brother-in-law wants more babies. My in-laws all think my wife and I are hypocrites, and we want to understand their perspective, and hopefully use that to figure out a way forward. My wife and I are both women. My wife and I want kids, and we would like it if they could be biologically related to us. But obviously there's an issue there as far as making babies goes. We were considering adoption when my wife suggested asking her older brother to donate sperm to us. I know this sounds batcrap crazy, but they're siblings, so they look a lot alike, and they're really close. and this is the closest we could possibly get to having a child that's biologically both of ours. The brother said he'd be willing to donate when we're ready, and can't wait to be an uncle. Since the brother agreed to this, he and his wife have found out that his wife can't have kids. Recently, the brother told us he wants to renegotiate the sperm donor situation. In short, he wants to make 5 babies with me. Again, I know how this sounds, and I wish this was not true. He and his wife want 3 kids. Me and my wife want 2. He wants me to go through 5 pregnancies, and he'll provide the sperm for each one. So biologically all 5 kids will be full siblings, but raised as cousins. We get how big a favor he'd be doing us by donating, and we were honestly thrilled when he agreed. But the thing is, the amount of time he'd spend creating 5 babies is about an hour or so, and the amount of time I'd spend is nearly 4 years, without recovery time. I was fine with 2 lots of 9 months when I was keeping the babies, but the idea of carrying those 2 plus 3 additional pregnancies where I didn't keep the babies is a whole other thing. When they asked my wife and I said no, they asked why not, and our response was that he was asking me to go through 3 more pregnancies on top of the 2 we'd agreed on. He then said that if we weren't willing to give him children, he wouldn't do the same for us. We said that was his right to change his mind, but he was asking too much from us. So now no one is having biological children. My wife and I were seriously considering adoption before the brother's suggestion ever came up, and we do still want to try that. So at the end of the day we'd be just as happy to have a non-biological child as a biological one. However, the brother, who doesn't want to adopt, has told their mother, who has told the extended family, and it appears that just about everyone in my wife's family believes that we should agree to it, and return the favor. So basically, if he gives us children, then I should do the same for him, and by the time I'm done everyone has their desired number of biological babies. The brother and his wife are similarly pressuring us, telling us they'd give us children, so why won't we give them kids, and that the 2 things are the same, and called us hypocrites because we would have kids with their help, but won't help them have kids. What do you think? Are we being unreasonable? Info: neither wife in this scenario, my wife or his, is able to produce viable eggs or carry to term, so some form of in vitro fertilization/surrogacy wouldn't be possible involving either of them. And I'm basically the only chance at biological children for any of us. The brother and his wife can't afford to pay a surrogate. We have tried to negotiate the number of kids, but they want exactly 3 kids, and they want them all to be full siblings because they're worried if I gave them one child with the brother's sperm, and they adopted the rest, then they'd subconsciously prefer the one who was related to the brother. To clarify, of the 2 biological requirements of creating children, producing viable eggs, and carrying to term, I am the only woman in this scenario that can do both, while my wife and my brother-in-law's wife can't do either. The only people in this situation capable of having children are myself and my wife's brother. Again, brother-in-law. I am not having my biological brother's babies. Also, we may go back to the adoption option, which was our plan before the brother was even suggested. But what do you all think? Subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories delivered to you. Thanks for listening. See you later.